label just the parts to a coordinate plane. So this is the first page. And so for the first one, you should say that the coordinate plane has two lines. So this would be coordinate plane. Okay, so the coordinate plane has two number lines which intersect at the origin. Okay, the origin is where the X and Y meet. The horizontal number line is the X-axis. The vertical one is the Y-axis. The X and Y axes are divided, the plane, into four quadrants. And the location of the point is called the ordered pair. And another name for ordered pair is relation, which we'll use a lot in this unit. So you want to make sure you add that word to number 6. Now, I only plotted the first 3 points. I do want you to make sure you have all 6 plotted. So, of course, the first point tells you how far to go over on the X. So, like for point A, you go over 3, and then you go up 4. Okay, so the second point tells you to go up or down. So just make sure you have all 6 of those graphed. All right, we're going to skip page 2 and move on to page 3. Actually, let's just do the graph on page 2. All right, so here at the bottom, okay, let me just go over what the question is asking first. It says electronics store is having a special sale, and for every 2 DVDs you buy at the regular price of $29, you get the third DVD free. So we need to make a table to show the cost of buying 1 to 5 DVDs, and we're going to actually say 1 to 6. So let's make this table up to 6. Okay. So each DVD costs $29, and for every 2 DVDs you buy, you get the third one free. All right. So if I buy 1 DVD, obviously that'll be $29. If I buy 2 times 29 will give me 58, and then I get the third one free. So this is my free one, so the price is not going to change. Okay. Now, if I get another one, I'm going to add 29 and 58. That's going to give me 87. Okay. If I buy another one, I'm going to add 29. That's going to give me 116. And then here I go again. I get the third one free. So that will be 116. Okay. So technically, and I don't even, let's not even put any numbers here right now, because that's really what I want you to do is to illustrate, because one of your homework problems will ask you to illustrate something on a graph. So what would be the shape of this graph if we buy 2 DVDs and then get the next one free? Now we are going to put some labels because the graph doesn't mean anything without having labels. So here will be the number of DVDs for the X-axis. Okay, number of DVDs. And then on the side, we're going to have the cost. Okay. And technically, we should have a title. And let's just put DVDs. Okay. So if I ask you to illustrate this as a graph, and again, not even paying attention to, the exact numbers, but what would the graph look like? So if we started, let's say at 1, and this graph, we buy a DVD, then we get the next one free. We buy 2 more DVDs and we get the next one free. So it would look sort of like that, because this will be the free one, and that's why it doesn't go up, okay, because you're going to stay at the same price. So that would be the shape of that particular graph. Let's say you were, and let me give you just another example like that, because you're going to have different situations for homework. So what if I say, what would be the graph of, let's say, time is here, and let's say we're cooking something. So this is the oven temperature. So what would be the shape of a graph if I turn on the oven and I'm trying to reach, let's say, 400 degrees? What do you think is going to happen? Yes?
It'd be going up like this.
Correct. So the graph is going to be steadily, the temperature will steadily rise, correct? And hopefully it will look something like that. Now, what happens if you open the door of the oven? Yes. Right. It might, you go out like this and you open the door, it might do this. Okay. You might see a little, it may not be as straight if you keep opening the door, because the temperature is going to fall. Correct? So when you're doing your homework, and it says like, there's one question, I believe, like you warm up, you're in gym, and then you warm up, and then you end up, exercising, and then you do a cool down. Okay. So you should be able to give me the shape of what that graph would look like. Okay, warming up first, and then you're starting to exercise, and then you're going to cool down at the end. Then you should kind of be able to follow what that curve would look like. Okay.
These are all going to be line graphs?
Yes. Well, there'll be, not like a straight line, just like we just had the oven, but they could definitely, yes, there all be no bar graphs, all correct line graphs. Okay. All right, let's move on to page 3. Okay. Now, have you guys talked about independent and dependent variables yet in science?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Very good. All right, so let's see. So we have independent and dependent variables, right? And the independent variable is the one that's not affected, and we usually graph that on the x-axis. Okay. And the dependent variable is the variable that is affected by the independent, and we graph that on the y-axis. Okay. Now, usually, if any of you guys ever been to the hospital or you've seen people in the hospital, they had to get intravenous needle. Okay, we call it an IV. So when you get an IV, do they tell you to hold your hand up in the air, or do they tell you to put your arm out? Usually independent. So IV. Okay, that's your x-axis. You can think of it as that. Stretching your arm out, that's the horizontal axis. So we always graph the independent variable on the x-axis. So let's look at number 1, since you guys said you kind of know a little bit about independent and dependent variable. So we're talking about the age and weight in children. And let's identify the independent variable first. So what is not being affected? Yes, the age. Very good. So here we're going to say the independent variable is the age, and then here we're going to put weight. Typically, the older the child is, typically what happens, the weight, is more for that particular child. Okay, as the age goes up, usually the heavier the child. All right, wind speed and wind chill. Which one is the independent variable? Which one is not affected? The wind speed or the chill of the temperature of the wind? Okay, which one would be the independent variable? The wind speed, right. And obviously, the chill of the air is going to be affected by the speed of the wind. So this would be the wind chill. Okay. So now we have college tuition and the year. And typically, guys, time is independent. Okay, whether it's in years, hours, okay, also time is age. But here we go. So independent variable, would be the year. And then the tuition would be the dependent variable. Because I am sure when your parents were in college, okay, whatever year that was, it's going to be much greater now in 2018. Okay, so yes, that can have an effect on how much you pay. All right, let's look at test scores and hours of study. Time, again, that's in hours. That is your independent variable. Okay. And then, of course, your test score. You know, typically we would think if you study more, then you will have a better test score for the most part. Okay, if you put some time in, if you don't study at all, ever, okay, you know, grade probably won't look too well. All right? Okay. All right, so let's move on. We're going to do some graphing today. So these nice calculators that we've had all this time, we actually get to graph them. And before we do that, if you look on page 4, and again, we're not going to like put numbers per se, but I want you to see this, and this is something you can write down because it tells us that DVDs are $10 a piece, and if we bought 10 of them, it didn't say anything was free. So basically it's just 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. Okay, so write that in real fast. Okay, because they're just $10 each. So it's not like you get anything free. So if I buy 1, it's 10. If I buy 2, it's 20, 3, and so on. Okay, so I put a title at the top. Cost of the DVDs. And this is definitely going to follow a linear path. That means it's going to end up being a line because you're just going up at a steady rate. Okay. And you don't need to put the numbers, but you can make sure you do put your labels here. And just draw a line that's going at a steady rate because that's what that graph would look like. Okay. Move on to this page. Now this page here is where we're going to be doing some graphing. Okay, so I'm going to just pull up the graphing calculator, and what you're going to do is you're going to do some nice graphing with tables. All right, so have your calculators on. I'm going to clear this out. All right, so if you're on page 5, and this will be one page you'll finish up as well. So I'm going to do some of these with you, and I'm going to show you how the graphing calculator can take you to a table, and then you're going to be writing in those values on page 5, and then you're going to plot the points and graph them. Okay, so on page 5 it says y equals 2x minus 3, and we call that the function. Okay, that's our function rule. So I'm going to hit this button right here that says y equals. Now notice how I have something here, and you might have something here because students have been using the calculator. So just hit clear because you don't want to have anything into the y1, y2, y3, and so on. So wherever you have something, just put it on that particular line and hit clear. One other thing I want to point out, make sure these plot 1, plot 2, and plot 3 are not dark. Now what do I mean by that? I'll show you. So see how now this looks like it's highlighted in black? Okay, you don't want that to happen, otherwise it will not graph. Okay, so if you get home and your calculator is not graphing, then make sure that these plots are not dark. If they are, you simply put the cursor directly on it, it'll blink, and then when you hit enter and bring it down, it'll unhighlight it for you. Okay, so that's the first thing. If your calculator isn't graphing, make sure those plots are not on. Okay, go make sure they're, not dark. All right, so we're going to put in 2x minus 3. So we're going to hit 2. And here's the x key right here. It's right beside the alpha key. All right here. So you get 2x, and make sure you hit the minus key off to the side. Don't hit negative at the bottom. 3. And now we can actually hit graph and see what it looks like. There's the graph of it. But what we really want are the coordinates for this. Okay, so to get to the table, if you notice right here, you see the word what? Table. So to get to anything in blue, I hit the second key and then the graph key, and then it takes me to the table. So it gives you all the points on this line. Now, they have actually told us on the sheet on page 5 which x values to look at. Okay, so you're going to fill in your table. So if you notice, 5 is paired up. What's the y value for 5? 7. Okay, and you can scroll up and down if you can't see on your calculator. 2 pairs up with 1. So fill in the table. 0 pairs up with -3, and -1 with -5. So fill in your points. Okay, and then after you have your table filled in, what do you think you're going to do? You're going to graph them, exactly. So now you're going to plot them on the coordinate plane, and then you will make a nice connection. That means like connect the dots and put arrows on both ends. So I'll give you a couple minutes to get that done. I'm going to walk around and take a look at them. Move on to number 2. All right, so in number 2, it says y equals x squared minus 5. So we're going to hit, let me just clear this out. Okay, so we're going to go back to y equals. We're going to hit clear. Okay, and guys, try to stay with me because some of you are like doing other things, so you want to look at the board so you can actually stay and follow exactly what I'm doing. Okay, I mean, this is nice to have a nice visual. You can actually see the buttons I'm pressing. All right, we're going to hit X. We're going to hit this squared key here because it's x squared minus 5. Okay, now when we hit graph, notice this is not a line because this is actually a quadratic function because it has a squared in it. So all squared terms like x squared, 2x squared, 5x squared, whatever, is going to be what we call a parabola. It's a U-shaped curve. So even for this, you do put arrows at the tips of these right here. So when you draw it, it should look like this, but you're going to have an arrow at both ends at the top. Okay, so let's go to the table. We're going to hit second graph. Okay, second graph. And now they want you to start with +3 and fill in the table. Okay, so just go ahead and copy down the table for the x values that they're asking you for in question number 2. And then once you get all your points copied, just like you did in question number 1, you're going to plot them. And then I'm going to come around and take a look. Okay, I'm going to take you to a page that you're going to have to do for homework. So let's go to page, let me see what page it is. I'm not sure. Yeah, page 8, because I want you to see on page 8, guys, you don't have the nice tables already made for you. So they don't dictate what x values to use. So you're going to need to make your own little T table. We call these T tables because it looks like a T. Just make a T, put X, Y, and you make your own table. So for page 8, you got to make a T table for each one since they're not already made for you like on page 5. Also, you get to choose which x values you would like to use. Now, there are some standard x values because you always like to have like positive numbers, negative numbers, and 0 if possible. So this is what I'm going to say at the top of this page. Okay, so your standard X values would be -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. Now, I would suggest using these standard numbers for X if it's not a decimal in the table for the Y. If it is, then just choose some other number. Okay, that's it. And you want to keep them small. Okay, don't try to, we're not going like make X 20 because your coordinate plane is not that big. So just choose some small values, but these are our standard small numbers. I do want you to have 5 points, so put 5 points at the top so you'll know that you need to at least plot 5 points for each. Okay, so write that at the top. I need to have 5 points in the table, right? Now, I need to show you how to do questions 3 and 4, because 3 and 4, notice it has, what kind of symbol is this? Absolute value. So we just need to make sure everybody knows how to get to this absolute value bar. All right, so we're going to do number 3 together. All right, so let's go back to our calculator. Okay, we're going to hit y equals. Anytime you're ready to graph, you always hit y equals. Okay, and let's clear this out. Okay. And then we're going to put in question number 3, which says negative first. So the negative key is down here. Make sure you're hitting the negative sign. And then to get to the absolute value, and you might even want to write this down. Write down math, arrow over, so just draw an arrow, and then enter. Okay, so to get to it again, it's math, arrow, enter. Okay, you might want to put that at the top of your paper somewhere. Math, draw an arrow, and then write the word enter. That's how you get to the absolute value bar when you have to graph number 4. Math, arrow, enter. All right, so now we're going to put in X. Okay, stay with me right there. Don't go any further, guys. Okay, put in the X. Now we have to get out of this because we don't want to put the +3 inside. So we arrow out. Okay, that's how you get outside of the bar. And then, what was it, -3 or +3? All right, so hit the plus sign. And then hit 3. All right, and then graph it. This is going to be like a V-shaped. So absolute value always graphs to be like a V-shaped curve. Okay, so that's what it looks like. And so when you're done putting your numbers in, you want to make sure it makes a V, upside down V. All right, and that's it. So now you can go to the table. How do we get to the table again? Second graph. All right, second graph takes us to the table. And now, remember I told you the standard points were -2, -1, 0, 1, 2. Try to use those. And if you want to use more, okay, I'm just saying there should at least be 5, but if you want to do more, that's fine. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly kind of review what your homework is. I'm going to actually do question number 1 on page 6. So go to page 6 because your homework will start from pages 6 and then 7 and then 8. Okay, so here it says, what are the variables in each group? And describe how the variables are related at various points on the graph. So all I want you to do for these 3 graphs is just to tell me what's going on. You can look at the title, how it's labeled. We're going to label time, the independent variable, so just write IV. So obviously if at the bottom of all of these, you will say independent variable. On the side, you will say dependent variable. So please put those labels first. Okay, make sure you're following along. Okay, so we're going to label each one. And then you're just going to tell me, like, as the time increases, what's happening with the volume. The volume increases. And all I want you to do is just use those words. As this independent variable does something, what is happening to the dependent? And I only want you to use the words increases and decreases. Okay, so you could say, you know, if something, you see something that might say, as this increases, this decreases. As this increases, the other one increases. And just put whatever the label is on the side. That's all you have to write. Don't give me a whole story. Okay. And then here, same thing. Remember I told you you have to, on the next page, where they give you situations where you have to sketch a graph. So all you're going to do for these is make like a little one quadrant. Okay, so just going to make the first quadrant for me for all of these. And you're just going to sketch me a graph of what is happening. You buy 2 shirts and the third one is free. Okay, so what will that graph look like? It will look like that one that we did with the DVDs, pretty much. Okay, so you buy a shirt, you get one free, buy a shirt, get one free. Okay, so it'll look something like that. You warm up in gym class, then you play basketball, and then you cool down. Okay, just draw me what would that look like. All right, so that's what you're doing for those. And then, of course, on this page, you're making your tables and you're plotting your points and you're connecting them. All right, so that's your homework. Now, so what are you doing for classwork today? You're going to finish up page 5. Okay, the one on page 5, you're going to finish that up, finish those tables up using your graphing calculators. Okay.